The day Miranda Hayes' husband announced their divorce on stage in front of 400 people, he didn't just leave her. He told the entire world why. After 6 years and 4 failed IVF cycles, it's time I find someone who can actually give me a family. Then he introduced his pregnant girlfriend to a ballroom full of cameras. Miranda was a CEO worth $40 million, and in 30 seconds, she became the woman the internet called too broken to keep a man. If you believe some stories need to be told, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this one will remind you that the family you choose is sometimes more real than the one you're born into. 6 months later, Miranda would lose everything: her company, her reputation, her mother's phone calls. She'd end up in a struggling community center in West Baltimore with a widowed father of 4 who worked 3 jobs just to keep his kids fed. And the 9-year-old boy who'd refused to trust her would look at his father from a hospital bed and whisper the words that changed everything. "Dad, I think maybe she's not leaving." This is the story of how Miranda Hayes learned that being called Barren just meant there was room for a different kind of family. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. Are you watching this at 2 in the morning because you can't sleep? During your lunch break? On your commute home? We want to know who's here with us for this story. 6 months before that hospital room, Miranda Hayes stood on a stage at the Baltimore Grand Hotel wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes. 400 guests in evening wear had just watched her announce a $2 million education initiative on behalf of Hayes Global Logistics, the company she'd built from nothing over 15 years. She was 38 years old. She had a corner office on the 40th floor. Her logistics company moved freight across 6 continents. Forbes had called her the woman redefining supply chain management for the digital age. What Forbes didn't know was that she'd spent that morning injecting herself with hormones for her 4th IVF cycle, that her hands shook so badly she'd jabbed the needle and crooked, that she'd cried in her car in the parking garage before reapplying her makeup and walking into that ballroom like she had her life together. Her husband, Derek Castellano, tech billionaire, venture capitalist, the kind of man whose TED Talk about disruptive innovation had 12 million views, stood beside her on that stage. He smiled at the applause. He waited for the room to quiet. Then he took the microphone from her hand. "Before we celebrate my wife's generosity with my money," he said, and the room chuckled because they thought it was a joke, "I have an announcement." Miranda's stomach dropped. She knew that tone, the one he used in boardrooms right before he gutted someone's proposal. "Miranda and I are divorcing." The room went silent. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. "After 6 years of marriage and 4 failed IVF cycles, it's time I find someone who can actually give me a family. The Castellano name deserves to continue, just not through this one." He gestured toward the front row. A woman stood up, younger, blonde, visibly pregnant, maybe 5 months along, wearing a dress that hugged every curve deliberately. "Meet Ashley," Derek said. "She's already carrying my son. Proof that the problem was never me." Miranda didn't cry. She'd learned a long time ago that tears were blood in corporate waters. Predators could smell weakness from across a boardroom, and this ballroom was full of predators, her board members, her competitors, journalists who'd been covering her company for years. She walked off that stage with her spine straight and her head high. She made it to the lobby. She made it to her car. She made it exactly 4 blocks before she had to pull over because she couldn't see through the tears anymore. Her phone lit up with notifications. The video was already trending. Someone had live-streamed the whole thing. The headlines wrote themselves. "Barren CEO dumped on stage. Tech mogul leaves infertile wife for younger model. The cost of ambition? Miranda Hayes' failed marriage." She called her mother. It went to voicemail. She called again an hour later. Voicemail again. Her mother called back 3 days later with a voice like ice. "You embarrassed this family. Your father and I raised you to be excellent, Miranda, not publicly humiliated. He divorced me on stage, Mom, in front of 400 people. And why do you think he felt comfortable doing that? Because you couldn't give him what every woman is supposed to be able to give. You failed at the most basic thing." The line went dead. Miranda sat in her penthouse that night, surrounded by furniture for a nursery she'd never filled, a crib still in its box, a rocking chair draped with blankets she'd bought 2 years ago, medical bills stacked on the counter, $30,000 worth of trying to fix something that apparently couldn't be fixed. 2 weeks later, her board called an emergency meeting. They didn't fire her. That would have been too obvious, too vulnerable to lawsuits. Instead, they strongly suggested she take a 6-month sabbatical. The optics are complicated, her CFO said, not meeting her eyes. The divorce is messy. Your personal life is affecting company perception. We need you to step back, regroup, come back when things have settled. They'd already started interviewing replacements. She could see it in how they avoided her gaze. Her attorney called that afternoon with what he called an opportunity. There's a struggling community center in West Baltimore. They need business consulting, pro bono work. It's a tax write-off, and frankly, it's good PR. Shows you're grounded, charitable, human. Miranda didn't want to be human. She wanted to disappear. But the silence in her penthouse was suffocating. Every room echoed with the ghost of a life she'd tried to build and failed. So she said yes. The Rosewood Community Center sat on a cracked sidewalk in West Baltimore, sandwiched between a boarded-up convenience store and a church with half its stained glass windows covered in plywood. The sign out front read, "After-School Program, All Welcome," with the W painted backward like a child had done it. Miranda pulled up in her Mercedes. Wrong move. 3 teenagers on the corner stopped talking to stare. A woman pushing a stroller crossed the street to avoid walking past her car. Inside, the center smelled like industrial cleaner and something baking. Cookies maybe, or cornbread. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Linoleum peeled at the corners. Donated furniture that didn't match filled a room painted the kind of beige that came from whatever paint the hardware store was discounting. 4 children sat at a folding table doing homework. They looked up when Miranda walked in. Designer coat, heels clicking on the linoleum, leather portfolio under her arm, and stared like she'd walked in from another planet. A boy, maybe 9, whispered to the girl next to him, "She looks like the lady from TV, the one whose husband—" "Terrell." The voice came from the back of the room, firm but gentle. A man emerged from what looked like a supply closet, carrying a mop and bucket. He wore a janitorial uniform with a name tag that said Marcus. Sleeves rolled up to his elbows, arms marked with old scars and new ones. He couldn't have been older than 35, but he had the kind of face that had seen enough to make him look both younger and older at the same time. He set the bucket down and wiped his hands on a rag. He didn't look at Miranda like she was famous. He looked at her like she was late. "You the consultant?" he asked. "Miranda Hayes." "Marcus Bennett. I run the after-school program when I'm not cleaning this building or stocking shelves at the distribution center on Locust Street or driving people to BWI Airport on weekends." No bitterness in his voice, just facts delivered like weather reports. "They said you'd help us with funding applications, budget management, grant proposals. We're about 3 months from closing our doors permanently." Miranda set her portfolio on the nearest table. "Let me see your financials." Marcus walked to a filing cabinet held together with duct tape and pulled out an accordion folder bound with rubber bands. Inside, handwritten ledgers, receipts stuffed into envelopes, grant rejection letters stamped in red ink. "Previous director wasn't great with paperwork," Marcus said quietly. "I'm not great with it either. But I keep the lights on and the kids fed, and that's about all I can manage right now." Miranda leafed through the chaos. No proper accounting, no digital records, no organizational system whatsoever. "This is—" She stopped herself. She'd been about to say, "a disaster," but something about the way Marcus stood there, shoulders square, jaw tight, bracing for judgment, made her change course. "This is fixable." Marcus exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Good, because I don't need you to save us. I just need you to help us buy time." Miranda nodded. She didn't tell him she wasn't sure she could save anything anymore, that she'd just lost her company, her marriage, and her last chance at the family she'd spent 6 years and $100,000 trying to build. She didn't tell him that she was here because she had nowhere else to be. If this story is hitting different than you expected, do us a favor and hit that like button. And drop a comment. Have you ever had to start over from scratch? Have you ever felt like everything you built just crumbled? We're reading every single one. Miranda came back the next morning at 8. The center didn't officially open until 3, but Marcus was already there, mopping the entryway. "You're early," he said. "So are you." "I work here." "You're volunteering." "Then I'm a very punctual volunteer." He almost smiled. Almost. She spent that first week trying to apply everything she'd learned, building a logistics empire to a community center, running on hope and expired grants. She restructured the budget, cut unnecessary expenses, eliminated the Friday pizza program because the math didn't work. That Friday, when the kids arrived after school, a boy, Dante, 7 years old with his 2 front teeth missing, walked straight to Marcus and asked, "Why is there no pizza?" Marcus didn't answer. He just looked at Miranda. She felt like she'd kicked a puppy. She scheduled a stakeholder meeting for 6 p.m. to discuss strategic planning. No one came. They were all working second shifts. She rewrote a grant application using corporate language, stakeholder engagement, and synergistic community outcomes. And Marcus read it over her shoulder and said quietly, "This doesn't sound like us." She snapped at a volunteer grandmother named Mrs. Patterson for arriving 20 minutes late. Mrs. Patterson, who babysat 3 other grandkids before coming to the center every day, didn't come back, and then came the grant application disaster. Miranda spent 3 days perfecting an application for $50,000 from the Baltimore Community Development Fund. 3 days of research, budgets, projections, references. She proofread it 4 times. She submitted it at 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the deadline. The rejection email came back in 6 hours. Application incomplete, required diversity impact statement missing, automatic disqualification, resubmission not permitted. Miranda stared at her laptop in the supply closet she'd turned into a makeshift office. Her hands shook. She'd run a $200 million company. She'd negotiated contracts with Fortune 500 corporations. She'd managed supply chains across 6 continents. She couldn't even file paperwork for a community center correctly. She sat on a box of donated winter coats and put her face in her hands. She didn't cry. She was too angry to cry. Angry at herself. Angry at Derek. Angry at her board. Angry at every doctor who told her, just relax, like her body was a machine that would work if she just found the right button. The door creaked open. Marcus stood there with a bottle of water and a granola bar that looked like it had come from his own lunch. "I cost you $50,000, Miranda said without looking up. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down on another box across from her. "You know how many grants I've been rejected from?" he asked. "How many?" 47. 47 times I've filled out paperwork, written essays about why these kids deserve a safe place after school, explained that my wife died and I'm raising 4 kids on $32,000 a year, beg strangers to care. 47 times I've gotten a letter that says, "Thank you for your interest, but you know what I do after each one?" Miranda looked up. "I fill out number 48. He handed her the water. "This isn't corporate, Miranda. Failure's just part of the process here. We try again. That's all we can do." He stood up, paused at the door. "The kids like having you here, even if you did kill Pizza Friday. Come back tomorrow." That night, Miranda sat in her car in the center's parking lot for 40 minutes. She finally cried. Not the polite, controlled tears she'd mastered for boardrooms. The ugly kind. The kind that made her nose run and her shoulders shake and her throat close up. When she was done, she looked up at the building. The lights were still on in Marcus's apartment above the center. She could see shadows moving behind the curtains. 4 kids getting ready for bed. A father who worked 3 jobs and still showed up for them. She started the car and drove home. She came back the next morning at 7:30. Over the next 3 weeks, something shifted. Miranda stopped wearing her designer coats. She switched from heels to flats because the center's floors were uneven, and she was tired of the clicking announcing her arrival like she was someone important. She learned names. She learned stories. Terrell was 9, Marcus's oldest. He did his homework like his life depended on it because, in a way, it did. He watched his father with eyes that were too old, too aware. He knew what 3 jobs looked like on a man's shoulders. He knew what it meant when his father came home too tired to eat, but still asked about their day. Dante was 7 with gap-toothed smiles and questions that never stopped. Miss Miranda, why do rich people have big houses if they're never home? Miss Miranda, do you think my dad's tired because he works too much or because we're too much work? Nia was 5, Marcus's only daughter. She hadn't spoken a full sentence since her mother died 2 years ago. She carried a stuffed rabbit everywhere, worn thin from being held too tight by hands that were afraid to let go. And Elijah was 3, still young enough to believe the world was safe. He called everyone Miss or Mister and fell asleep during story time with his thumb in his mouth. Miranda noticed things she'd never had time to notice before. Marcus packed 4 lunches every morning, but never one for himself. Terrell's shoes were too small. She could see how his toes pressed against the front, but he never complained. Nia watched Miranda's hands when she typed, mimicking the movements in silence like she was learning a language she couldn't yet speak. The center's heat didn't work after 6 p.m., but Marcus stayed until 8 finishing paperwork in his coat, breath visible in the cold. One afternoon, Miranda found Marcus in the small kitchen, dividing a single sandwich into 4 pieces. "You didn't eat lunch," she said. "Wasn't hungry." Marcus. He looked up, and for the first time, she saw how tired he was. Not just physically, the kind of tired that lives in your bones. "I eat," he said quietly, "just not always at lunch." Miranda didn't say anything. She left. 20 minutes later, she came back with bags from the deli 3 blocks away. Sandwiches, fruit, cookies, enough for him and the kids. "I can't accept," Marcus started. "It's not charity," Miranda interrupted. "It's lunch. And if you don't eat, you're setting a terrible example for those 4 kids who think you're invincible." He stared at her for a moment. Then he took the bag. "Thank you," he said. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, during what was supposed to be a routine fire drill. The alarm went off, sharp, piercing, the kind of sound designed to cut through everything. The kids filed out orderly enough, all except Nia. Miranda found her in the bathroom, crouched in the corner, hands pressed over her ears, eyes wide and unseeing. Her whole body shook. She wasn't breathing right. Short, rapid gasps that didn't seem to reach her lungs. "Nia," Miranda said softly, kneeling down. "Nia, honey, it's okay. It's just a drill." But Nia couldn't hear her. She was somewhere else. Somewhere terrible. Marcus was at his warehouse job. Terrell was outside with the other kids, and he'd seen his sister was missing. His face went pale. Miranda didn't hesitate. She closed the bathroom door, muffling the alarm. She sat down on the floor next to Nia, not touching her, just close. "Nia," she whispered, "can you hear me?" No response, just those terrible, shallow breaths. Miranda started breathing. Loud, exaggerated. In through her nose, out through her mouth. Over and over. "In," she said softly. "Out. In. Out." Slowly, so slowly, Nia's eyes focused. She looked at Miranda. "That's it," Miranda whispered. "Breathe with me. In. Out." Nia's breathing started to sink, still shaky, still too fast. But sinking. Miranda started humming. She didn't even know where it came from. Some half-remembered lullaby her grandmother used to sing in Mandarin when Miranda was small and the world felt too big. And then Nia hummed back. Just a note, barely audible. But there. Miranda kept humming. Nia kept breathing, and slowly the panic receded. By the time Marcus burst through the door 15 minutes later, shirt still damp with warehouse sweat, panic in his eyes. Nia was curled against Miranda's side, humming softly, the rabbit clutched in one hand. Marcus stopped in the doorway, just stopped. "She's okay," Miranda said quietly. "I think she just needed someone to breathe with her." Marcus knelt down. Nia looked up at him, then back at Miranda, then reached for her father with one hand while keeping the other hand tangled in Miranda's sleeve. "Both," she whispered, the first word she'd spoken in 6 months. Marcus's eyes filled. He gathered his daughter up, but looked at Miranda over Nia's head with something that looked like wonder. Have you ever witnessed someone see you, really see you, for the first time? Drop a comment and tell us about it. Miranda didn't realize it was happening until it had already happened. Terrell asked her to check his math homework. Dante showed her a drawing he'd made of a spaceship. Elijah fell asleep in her lap during story time, his weight warm and trusting. Nia started taking Miranda's hand during pickup, those small fingers wrapping around hers like an anchor. One afternoon, Nia tugged Miranda's sleeve and pointed to a crayon drawing taped to the wall. 5 stick figures. One labeled Daddy in Marcus's handwriting. 3 smaller ones, Terrell, Dante, Elijah. One medium-sized one, Nia, and one more, taller, wearing what looked like a skirt. Underneath, also in Marcus's handwriting, Miss Rhonda. Miranda stared at it. Her throat burned. "That's what she calls you," Marcus said softly from behind her. "She can't quite say Miranda yet, but she wanted you in the picture." Miranda touched the drawing with one finger. "She drew me into her family." "Yeah," Marcus said. "She did." That night, Miranda took a picture of the drawing. She sent it to her mother with no caption. Her mother never responded. Miranda didn't care. She printed the photo and put it in her wallet, right where a different kind of family photo might have gone. Miranda's attorney called on a Friday. "The board wants you back. Derek's new venture is hemorrhaging money. Stock's down 35%. They need you to stabilize the company." There was a board meeting, Monday morning, her old building in downtown Baltimore. Miranda went. She walked into that conference room in her flat shoes and a blazer she'd bought at Target because she'd been donating most of her salary to keep the center's lights on. Derek was there. Ashley, too, belly even more prominent now, hand resting on it deliberately. "Miranda," Derek said with that smooth voice she used to think meant confidence. Now she recognized it as performance. "You look different." "Busy," she said. The board presented their offer. Full reinstatement, corner office, salary increase. Derek would step back from operations. "One condition," Derek added, leaning back in his chair. "No more public failures. No more charity work that makes the company look soft. We need the Miranda Hayes who built this empire, not whoever you've been pretending to be in the hood." The room went silent. Miranda stood slowly. She looked at each board member. Men and women she'd worked with for 15 years. People she'd thought were colleagues, maybe even friends. "I spent 6 years building a company that makes money," she said, "and 3 months building something that actually matters. I know which one I can live without." She turned to the board. "I resign, effective immediately. Sell my shares, donate the proceeds to community development initiatives in West Baltimore." Derek laughed. Actually laughed. "You're throwing away $40 million to play teacher at a community center?" "No," Miranda said, and her voice was steady, clear, certain. "I'm walking away from people who measure worth by what you can produce instead of who you choose to protect." She walked out. She didn't look back. If you're still watching, hit that like button and subscribe if you believe some things matter more than money. 2 weeks after Miranda walked away from $40 million, a man in an expensive suit showed up at the center. Property developer. The building had been sold. New owner wanted to demolish it for luxury condos. They had 30 days to vacate. Marcus read the notice, face carefully blank. The kids didn't understand yet. They kept playing, kept laughing, kept being children who didn't know their safe place was about to disappear. That night, Miranda found Marcus on the roof of the building, staring at the city lights. "I've been here before," he said quietly. "After my wife died. Medical bills, funeral costs. We lost our house. Had to move into the apartment upstairs because the old director let us stay rent-free. This place saved us when we had nowhere else to go, and I can't save it back." Miranda sat beside him. The night air was cool. Somewhere below, a car alarm went off. Life in Baltimore, continuing like nothing was ending. "How much?" Miranda asked. "For what?" "To buy the building." Marcus looked at her like she'd spoken another language. "Miranda, it's $1.2 million. We can't. I just liquidated $40 million in stock." Miranda interrupted. "I can buy the building, set up a trust, endow the center properly, make sure it never has to worry about funding again." Marcus stared at her. Why would you do that? Because someone once told me that when you're not sure you can save anything, sometimes you just need to buy time. You bought time for your kids, for this community. For me, even if you didn't know it, let me buy time for all of us. Miranda, I already made the call, she said. Papers will be ready by Friday. Marcus didn't say anything. He just pulled her into a hug, sudden, tight, desperate, and whispered against her hair. Thank you. God, thank you. Miranda held him back and realized this was the first time in years someone had touched her like she was necessary, like she mattered, not for what she could produce or provide, but for who she chose to be. It happened 3 weeks later on a Wednesday night. Marcus called Miranda at 11:47 p.m. His voice was tight with controlled panic. Terrell has a fever, 104, he's delirious. The clinic's closed. ER wait time is 6 hours. I'm coming, Miranda said. She was in her car in 3 minutes. She still had her corporate health insurance, active for another 2 weeks. She got Terrell seen in 20 minutes. Pneumonia, early stage, treatable. But if they'd waited those 6 hours, the doctor didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Terrell woke up in a hospital room at 2 in the morning. Miranda was asleep in the chair beside his bed, still in her pajamas and a coat she'd thrown on, hair tangled, no makeup, hand resting near his on the blanket. He stared at her for a long time. When Marcus arrived from his night shift, shoes squeaking on hospital linoleum, Terrell whispered, Dad? Yeah, buddy. I don't think she's leaving. Marcus looked at Miranda, still asleep, exhausted, present. No, he said softly. I don't think she is. Spring came to Baltimore. Miranda had been at the center for 5 months. She'd started a rooftop garden with the kids, tomatoes, herbs, sunflowers, something green growing in all that concrete. Marcus found her there one evening after the kids had gone inside. She was covered in dirt, hair escaping its ponytail, laughing at something Dante had said about whether plants could hear music. You have mud on your face, Marcus said. She looked down at herself. Oh, yeah, occupational hazard. You wore Armani to board meetings 5 months ago. I wore a lot of things I didn't need. Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough to count the days of exhaustion and hope written in the lines around his mouth. What do you need? He asked quietly. Miranda's breath caught. I don't know yet. I'm still figuring it out. Can I be part of that? The figuring out? She nodded. He kissed her, gentle, questioning, like he was asking permission with every second. She kissed him back, dirt-stained hands and all. When they pulled apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I never thought I'd feel this again, he whispered. After Sarah died, I thought that part of me died too. I never thought anyone would choose me, Miranda said. Not after being called broken so many times I started to believe it. You're not broken, Marcus said. You're just planted in better soil now. Derek showed up at the center 2 weeks later. Expensive suit, expensive car, expensive regret written all over his face. Ashley left, he said without preamble. Took the baby. I'm alone. Miranda kept stacking chairs. The center was closed, just her and Derek, and the echo of children who'd gone home. I made a mistake, Derek continued. You and I, we built something. We could do it again. I'll fund your little project here. Make it official. Good optics for the company. Good optics for us. Miranda turned slowly. You think I'm here for optics? I think you're here because you're angry. But anger fades, Miranda. Come back. Be who you were. Be who we were. The door opened. Marcus stepped in, Elijah on his hip. The 3-year-old was half asleep, face pressed into his father's shoulder. She is who she was, Marcus said quietly. You just never bothered to see it. Derek looked between them. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Disbelief. You're choosing this? He asked Miranda. Him? Them? A community center in West Baltimore over everything we built? Miranda walked to Marcus, took Elijah gently from his arms. The toddler curled against her immediately, still half asleep, trusting. I'm not choosing, she said, looking at Derek. I already chose. 5 months ago when I realized being called Barren just meant there was room for a different kind of family. Derek left. He didn't say goodbye. Marcus watched him go, then looked at Miranda holding his youngest son. "You sure about this?" he asked softly. "It's not an easy life." "I spent 6 years in an easy life," Miranda said. "I was miserable. I'll take hard and happy over easy and hollow any day." What would you choose? Easy and hollow or hard and happy? Drop your answer in the comments. 6 months after Miranda walked into the Rosewood Community Center, she got an invitation. The same charity gala, same ballroom. She'd been invited as a community partner. She brought Marcus and the kids. Terrell in a thrift store suit that was still a little too big. Dante asking everyone if rich people really did eat different food. Nia in a donated dress, holding Miranda's hand with fingers that didn't shake anymore. Elijah calling everyone Miss or Mister, with that 3-year-old confidence that the world was good. When they called Miranda to the stage, she brought all of them with her. The room went quiet. Camera flashes. Murmurs. 6 months ago, Miranda said into the microphone, "I stood on this stage and was told I failed because I couldn't have children." She looked at Marcus, at Terrell, at Dante, at Nia, at Elijah. "Today, I'm standing here with 4 kids who taught me that family isn't about biology. It's about showing up. It's about choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. It's about being chosen, not for what you can produce, but for who you become when you stop pretending to be perfect." She looked out at the crowd. Some faces she recognized. Board members who'd pushed her out. Competitors who'd celebrated her fall. Journalists who'd written those headlines. The Hayes Bennett Foundation is officially endowing the Rosewood Community Center with $15 million. Because some places are worth saving. Some people deserve to be chosen. And some families are built one choice at a time. The room erupted in applause, some of it genuine, some of it performative. Miranda didn't care. Marcus's eyes were shining. "Hayes Bennett?" he whispered. "If you'll have me," Miranda whispered back. "Always." Terrell tugged her sleeve. "Does this mean you're staying? Like, forever staying?" Miranda knelt down to his level. All 4 kids gathered around. "Forever staying," she said. Dante grinned. "Even when we're annoying?" "Especially then." Nia hugged her without a word. Elijah patted her face with his small hand. And Miranda realized something she'd never understood when she was measuring her worth in board meetings and IVF cycles. This was what full felt like. 5 years later, the rooftop garden had spread. Tomatoes climbed trellises. Sunflowers towered over railings. Mint tangled with basil and peppers and squash. Miranda and Marcus sat on a bench they'd built together, watching Terrell help Dante with algebra, watching Nia read to Elijah, watching their family grow in ways that had nothing to do with blood. "You ever regret it?" Marcus asked. "Walking away from all that money?" Miranda thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," she said finally. "I regret the years I spent thinking worth came from what I could produce instead of who I could love." Marcus kissed her temple. "For what it's worth, you produced pretty good tomatoes." She laughed. "That's what you're going with? Tomatoes? And 4 kids who call you mom. And a center that's opened 6 more locations. And a foundation that's helped 2,000 families. But mostly the tomatoes." Miranda elbowed him gently, but she was smiling, because he was right. Barren soil could still grow miracles. You just had to be willing to stay long enough to plant them. If this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling us what family means to you. The one you're born into or the one you choose. Share this with someone who needs to hear that being called broken doesn't mean you are. And remember, sometimes the family you choose is the one that chooses you back.